Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Experts, we are talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, with Erin Doan, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director for Vizo Financial. Erin, thank you so much for being here with me today to talk about DEI. But before we get started, would you mind telling our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for having me today. Really happy to be here. I'm Erin Doan. I have worked with Vizo Financial for almost 20 years. In September, it'll be that 20-year mark. I've worked in several different roles for the organization, starting in member services and then a variety of administration roles in marketing and supporting our president and CEO and board of directors. And then in more recent years, I've focused more on our community involvement, both internally with our staff and externally engaging our credit unions in more community focused initiatives. And then my most recent role is moving into this DEI space, which is newer for me, but just loving everything that I'm learning and the people I'm meeting. And I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Great, great. Well, let's dive in. So, DEI was added as the eighth cooperative principle. What does diversity, equity, and inclusion look like for credit unions?
I really believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, has really been part of the credit union movement since its inception. The whole philosophy that our mission is to serve the underserved. We talk about people helping people. And for credit unions, that really means all people. It's an inclusive of everyone, all walks of life, all dimensions of our society and people. And credit unions really came in to fill that niche in the financial space. And so I really think adding that as the eighth cooperative principle really hasn't been a huge stretch from the initial inception of our mission. I think we're seeing across the country, DEI is growing at credit unions everywhere. It's being prioritized in a way that like I said, I think it's always been part of our DNA, but I think it's really being prioritized in the current environment. I saw CUNA recently published some findings from their annual membership survey that said in 2021, 60% of credit unions are focused on DEI, and that's up from 37% in 2019. So when I saw them
Wow.
publish that, those numbers, I thought, we're really seeing a growth there.
Wow, wow, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that statistic. So, I can only imagine creating and implementing a DEI plan. It just seems like a rather large task. And I know that you personally were one of the representatives in establishing one for Vizo Financial. So, could you share with us like what steps Vizo Financial took to begin their DEI efforts?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start off by saying I think Vizo Financial had fostered an environment of inclusivity for many, many years. Our executive management has prioritized culture building. We have a culture department at the organization. And so I think that the work that our culture department has done for many years has really laid the groundwork for us to step into this DEI space more fully. So that being said, following the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020, our president and CEO at that time really prioritized DEI and wanted to see a more formalized program built out at Vizo Financial. And I think that goes to the point that a commitment to this work really starts at the top of the organization. And I think we've been very fortunate at Vizo Financial that our executive management and our board of directors have really been behind these principles and this work. And that has really made my job that much easier, knowing that we have the support from those levels, of the corporate. But at that time, back in 2020, working with executive management, we drafted an initial document kind of outlining what were some key steps that we wanted to take that moved us further into this space, and also identified some partnerships that we wanted to further develop and kind of expand our network so that we could meet new people, have access to more education and information in this space, and just kind of grow it from there. At that point, we engaged our credit union development educators, our DEs. So Vizo Financial DEs got together and, using that great brain trust, talked about different ways that we could further develop our DEI plans. And we also talked about engaging an external consultant. So our DEs really fleshed out what would we want in that external consultant and kind of went through that process of research. Around the same time, I personally completed a DEI certificate program that was hosted through Georgetown University and was brought about by the Maryland and DC Credit Union Association. So I, on a personal level, was completing that training at around the same time. And then we did engage with an external consultant that assisted us. I think the biggest value that they brought was a lot of information gathering around the organization. They conducted one-on-one interviews with our executive management. We did an anonymous staff survey. They hosted 3 small focus groups that focused on different areas of our employees. They did one with Black employees, one with members of the LGBTQ plus community, and then also a general group, just gathering more feedback from our staff. Then we also created a 10-member DEI champions group, and our consultant hosted 2 strategic planning sessions with that group specifically. Out of all of that information, they provided a roadmap document where they identified some key initiatives that we could focus on as an organization over the next 12 to 24 months. And I think just all of that work really helped us formulate the framework of a plan of kind of like, where should we focus our efforts? Where would we kind of get the most bang for our buck as we head out on this? And I think part of that too was also identifying some other organizations in the country that, again, we wanted to become members of or partner with just to learn from them. And those groups included the Worldwide Foundation for Credit Unions, the work they do with the Global Women's Leadership Network. We also joined the African American Credit Union Coalition, who I think is really on the cutting edge of DEI education and efforts. And we've also been attending a lot of education sessions that are hosted by CU Pride, Inclusive, and CUNA Mutual Group. And I know, just recently we had a good number of staff that attended a DEI workshop that the Carolinas Credit Union Foundation hosted. So we really see all those outward partnerships is very integral to our own DEI journey.
Wow. I mean, I want to speak for our listeners, but Erin, that's a lot of stuff that you guys have been doing. Since you said you started implementing that in 2020, that is a lengthy list of initiatives that you have been able to, kind of start, and it's amazing to hear. But tell me about how implementing the DEI program at Vizo Financial impacted the organization, and were there any challenges with all of those items?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I said it earlier, and it's so true. We have been so fortunate by the support that our board of directors and executive management have shown, for this work. And that has been huge, for these efforts at Vizo Financial. I will say I feel like we have accomplished a lot. We've put a lot of good things in place, but I think we're still very much at the beginning of our journey. I think our focus right now is to really build engagement with our staff, offering education and activities that just get people engaged and talking about some things that maybe they've never really talked about at work before, or learning things about their coworkers that they never knew. So a big thing for us is, sharing those stories and creating spaces where we can have more of those conversations. I think at this point, we haven't faced a lot of challenges, but I think the one that stands out the most to me is, we are a mostly remote workforce at this point. The pandemic kind of forced us into that. And we found that the virtual environment works very well for most of our staff. And we anticipate that a lot of staff will be remote. For some time, for an indefinite amount of time. And I think in that kind of environment, it takes a lot more intentionality um, to move these efforts forward. We're not just running into people in the hallway anymore. We're not just, bumping into people that maybe we don't work with all the time, but oh, I saw you in the lunchroom, or, I'd see you at the coffee maker, and kind of missing out on some of those opportunities. It just takes more intentional work. And so that's something that the DEI champions are talking about, is how do we create those spaces that bring people together, that they can have more of these conversations.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'll be the first one to admit I miss running into people at the office. So I get excited when people come into the office when I'm there. So yeah, there's a lot of missed opportunities, and coming up with alternative ways sounds like an excellent opportunity for the staff. Could you share with us some of your other current DEI efforts and plans going into the future here?
Sure. Yeah. I'm excited to talk about some of these things because we have put some things in place, that we're excited about. One of the first initiatives that our champions group took on was to create a diversity calendar for the year of 2022. We took the survey data that we collected from employees to kind of guide what would go in that calendar, highlighting a variety of cultural and religious holidays that we know are important and significant to our employees specifically. And then we're really using that calendar as a guide to kind of take us through the year of highlighting special days of recognition. We've also started publishing a monthly newsletter, which we allowed our staff to name. And the name of the newsletter is Perspectives, which I think is just so perfect and really encompasses everything that we want the newsletter to be. So we highlight different cultural days. We do some, defining of DEI terms, and then try to give some practical action steps, like what can I do today to kind of further DEI. We've also started hosting a monthly DEI related lunch discussion, and that's held virtually every month. We focused on topics like poverty awareness in America. We had a staff member share his Black experience in February around Black History Month. We just did one on celebrating women in March, and I know we have one planned in April to focus on mental health. We've also created a page on our website to host some of our DEI related content. Some other things that we're kind of doing and have planned for the future is updating our organizational policies and documents, kind of scanning everything. Is our language inclusive? Are we weaving DEI principles into the way we approach just the management of the organization? I think some of that, is definitely going to go into our recruiting, hiring, and employee retention practices. Um, and again, just seeking those opportunities to connect with staff, creating safe spaces, offering trainings. We will have our first mandatory all staff training in April. It's kind of built around some other cultural trainings that we do on a monthly basis, and the one for April will be focused on DEI and kind of connected back to our core values. So I think that'll be a great opportunity for us to share this with all the staff, and especially those that may not have been able to attend, the other lunch sessions or that sort of thing.
Wow, that all sounds fantastic. So congratulations on all of that work, and congratulations to your committee that's been working on this and getting all of these pieces together. So, what advice would you give to credit unions who are trying to convince their leaders from a business perspective to implement DEI practices at their credit union?
Well, first of all, I mean, Prioritizing DEI just makes good business sense. I mean, there is a ton of data out there that proves that. Not all of that can be calculated in a more traditional sense. But when you look at the employee life cycle, the costs that are associated with recruiting, hiring, and retaining good employees. Studies have shown when you have a good DEI program in place and you're creating spaces where people feel included and that they're valued and they feel like they belong, they're happier. They're more productive at work. They stay longer. They're more engaged in the teamwork and the initiatives that the organization are doing. And that all contributes to the bottom line. We've also found that teams that are more diverse and include a wide range of perspectives are more innovative. They come up with more creative solutions that best meet the needs of members, employees, and the communities that credit unions are serving. And I think really prioritizing DEI will attract and retain more loyal members. I think we're seeing more and more that people want to do business with organizations that align with their own values. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that credit unions have done very, very well, forever. But I think this is just another step of showing, their care for their employees and members of individuals. And then again, that extends out to the communities where they serve. And all of that comes back and contributes to the bottom line of the credit union.
Right, right. Some people, they may believe that their credit union is doing enough in the areas of DEI without having maybe a formal DEI plan. What would you say to those people?
Well, I certainly understand that sentiment, and we live in a world where people are busy. Everybody feels like, oh, we're so busy. We're doing all this. We're doing enough with DEI. Our people are happy. But I would say you can always do more. And you may not really know how the people in your organization are feeling. And maybe what you think is enough really isn't enough for everyone. So I would say, you don't have to have a super defined roadmap of this is exactly what we're going to do forever. But I think just getting started somewhere, identifying a few key objectives that you can focus on to get started, and then implement some tracking. How are you tracking engagement? And is that engagement at the employee level, the member level? Reach out and get feedback from your employees and then make adjustments accordingly and continue to build. I think that it can be small steps that's done with intentionality can really move the needle. And I would also say just look for resources that are out there that you can tap into. There is so much out there that you don't have to design everything from ground zero. Just tapping into those partners that are offering great education and resources to help you get started is a great way to go. And in this space, we talk a lot about our DEI journey, and it's never over. It's integrated into all parts of the organization, and you've never arrived and can say, "Oh, we're done now, and we don't have to worry about that anymore." So again, just those small steps can have a huge impact over time. Just get started.
Great. Well, I have one final question, Erin. More than likely with DEI, there are going to be some hard conversations at the credit union. What is your advice on the best way to have these type of conversations?
Yeah, this is a good question. First, I just want to acknowledge we are all different. We're all humans and we all bring our own perspectives, beliefs, biases, lived experiences. We bring all of that into our interactions every day. So I really just recommend as we enter conversations that can be difficult, that can be uncomfortable, to really enter those talks with humility, some vulnerability, and openness to listen. I think just having that mindset of like, I don't need to be right. I can listen to you and learn from you. Doesn't mean that we'll agree on everything, but at least being able to have the conversation helps us understand each other better. Um, and I think that's where the growth happens. Um, I would also say I would just challenge you to kind of get comfortable with the uncomfortable. This is an uncomfortable space. There are a lot of things that are feel good and they build us up, and then there are other topics that make people feel like, "Oh, I don't want to go there. I don't think I want to talk about that." But I would challenge you and say, like, that's where the magic happens. Like, that's where we break down the walls that divide us. That's where we understand each other better. And I think the better we understand each other, we just work better together. Um, and that just contributes to the overall success of the credit union, because we're just kind of firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Um, I think just to reiterate, to just get started. We talk about the way the environment has been through the pandemic and this kind of like this reset. And I think, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think in general, there really is a yearning out there for people to feel a deeper connection to the work they're doing, a deeper connection to the people around them, a deeper feeling of like, is what I'm doing matter? And just that feeling of purpose and value and belonging. And I
Yeah,
think we're really at a point um, where those feelings are very prevalent. And there is a desire for there to be spaces and systems where there's safety and justice for everyone. And I think the time is now. So just get started, and you're going to do great out there.
all right, great. Thank you again. And for more information about Vizo Financial's DEI efforts, as Erin alluded to, we do have a DEI page on our website. So go to www.vfccu.org for more information. Thanks for listening today, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.